You're watching Press TV's News Review, where we look deeper into some of the top stories of the day. Stay tuned. On this News Review, Russia's lower house of parliament gives its definitive approval to constitutional changes that allow Vladimir Putin to rerun for president in 2024. The 450-seat State Duma voted in favor of the changes in a third and final reading by 383 votes. Nobody voted against, but 43 lawmakers abstained. The lawmakers approved the first and second reading of the bill on Tuesday. The motion will now go to the upper house of parliament pending a public vote to be finalized. Putin has dominated the Russian political landscape for 2 decades now as either president or prime minister. He's given his blessing to the constitutional amendment. Joining us on this edition of the News Review, we have our correspondent Marina Kortunova, who's joining us from the Russian capital, Moscow. Also, Russia affairs expert Marcus Papadopoulos is joining us from the British capital, London. Welcome to the program. Let's start off with our correspondent Marina in Moscow. Marina, talk to us more about the lower house giving the go-ahead for the constitutional changes.
Well, in late January, President Putin submitted a bill to Duma on amendments to the fundamental law, which changes that aim to develop provisions that enshrine the foundations of the constitutional system, including human and civil rights and freedoms. And the bill also introduces an all-Russian vote, a procedure that is new for the country. Yesterday, on Tuesday, Russian President spoke on the constitutional amendments in the State Duma, and he noted that the proposed amendments would bolster national sovereignty and help society. And Putin also commented on the idea to remove constitutional limits on the number of terms a president can serve, saying that it was inappropriate and viable. And according to the Russian president, rotation of power is needed to ensure a country's dynamic development. So Russia, according to him, Russia needs strong presidential rule. Dual power is risky. As he dwelt on the parliamentary system as a type of government that president said at the current stage it was not applicable in Russia. A proposal was put forth to extend the incumbent president's presidential term based on people's vote on constitutional amendments. And Putin says zeroing out previous office terms possible if approved by a constitutional court. So today on Wednesday, the lower house of the parliament, Russian parliament, the State Duma, gave its final approval to the presidential bill on the amendments to the constitution. So the State Duma passed the bill in 383 vote with 44 abstentions. The bill expands the authority of Russia's parliament and constitutional court, bars officials from holding foreign passports and residence permits, and ensures the supremacy of the constitution within Russia's legal system. Besides, it adds a reference to God to the constitution and enshrines the role of Russian as the language of a state-forming ethnic group. The bill also amends laws related to procedures and the implementation of the constitutional amendments. I want also to add that on Friday last week on Friday, at a meeting with the heads of the State Duma's political groups, Putin said that Russian constitution needs amendments because the situation in the country has drastically changed. Of course, in society, all this situation with changes to the constitution and yesterday's statement by the president caused, to put it mildly, and ambiguous reaction and a huge number of comments.
Thanks a lot, Marina. Let's go over to London now. Marcus Papadopoulos, what are your thoughts on the amendments, and what kind of effect will it have for Russian politics?
Russia is not the West, and there is no reason why it should be. Because Russia is a vast and diverse country, it is absolutely imperative that the country is run on an authoritarian manner, and that the Russian state is a centralized one. Indeed, authoritarianism and centralization are in the genetic code of Russia and Russians. Indeed, catastrophe will strike Russia if authoritarianism and centralization are not present in Russia. And we saw that under Nicholas II, Mikhail Gorbachev, and Boris Yeltsin. And since 2000, under the reign of Vladimir Putin, Russia is once again run on an authoritarian basis, and the Russian state is a super centralized state. And both of those elements go a long way in accounting for why the territorial integrity of the Russian Federation has been preserved, which was threatened because of the war in the North Caucasus and because of Boris Yeltsin's decentralization of Russia. And also both elements go a long way in accounting for why Russian power has been resurrected both at home and abroad. Indeed, if it hadn't have been for Vladimir Putin, if it hadn't have been for his authoritarian rule and for his centralization of Russia, then Russia would not have been able to come to the aid of the Syrian people in their fight against terrorism, because the Russian military during the 1990s under Boris Yeltsin had become a decrepit force. Russia was falling apart under Boris Yeltsin. Why? Partly because he decentralized the Russian state. So historically speaking, Vladimir Putin is a typical Russian leader. And to Western audiences, I say this: you might not approve of authoritarianism, but the average Russian person not only supports Russia being run on an authoritarian basis, but also the average Russian understands that if Russia is not run according to an authoritarian manner, then the security of Russia externally and internally will be threatened, and the well-being of the average Russian will be in jeopardy.
All right, thanks a lot, Russia affairs expert Marcus Papadopoulos speaking to us from London. And also thanks to our correspondent Marina Kortunova, who joined us earlier from the Russian capital, Moscow. With that, it brings us to an end here on this edition of Press TV's News Review. But do stay tuned, there's plenty more to come. Bye for now.